Have you ever stopped to think that maybe, just maybe, the way we learn from each other is actually what made our brains, well, so big and complex?
It's a really compelling thought, isn't it?
Yeah, we're diving into this idea today, one that literally shaped, the human mind.
Exactly. We're talking about the cultural drive hypothesis. It comes from Alan Wilson, a truly brilliant scientist. People mostly know him for the mitochondrial Eve idea.
Oh, right, tracing ancestry back.
Yeah, that one. But this was his other really big idea. He basically connected dots others hadn't, suggesting this powerful feedback mechanism.
And that's our mission for this deep dive, giving you that shortcut. We've got a pile of sources, personal thoughts, heavy-duty science stuff to figure out how this simple-sounding idea could explain intelligence, not just for us, but like everywhere in the animal kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
We want to arm you with some surprising facts, maybe reshape how you think about what intelligence even is.
Okay, so where did Wilson even start with this?
Well, it kicked off with this really fundamental observation he made. He noticed this weird acceleration, almost an explosion, in brain growth over really long timescales.
Mm-hmm.
He looked at the whole lineage, from early amphibians right up to humans, and found the brain grew, relative to body size, about 100 times bigger over 400 million years.
100-fold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just steady growth, it was speeding up.
Yeah.
That acceleration really screamed feedback mechanism to him. Something had to be driving itself.
Exactly. He figured the brain wasn't just passively getting bigger, it was actively, driving its own evolution. So he proposed this 3-step cultural drive idea.
Okay, break it down.
Right. Step 1, some individual comes up with a new trick, an innovation. Could be anything useful, like a new way to get food.
Like cracking nuts differently.
Precisely. Step 2, this cool new habit spreads because others watch and copy social learning.
Makes sense.
Then, step 3, natural selection kicks in. It starts favoring individuals who happen to have maybe tiny brain mutations that make them better innovators or better copiers. Oh, okay.
Wilson literally said, among the many kinds of mutations that could improve the brain's ability to innovate and catch on, some will produce more neurons or dendrites and thus raise the relative size of the brain. He thought this could explain that exponential growth curve.
So it's this kind of runaway process. Is that the idea?
Exactly. A runaway process. Each time a good habit spreads, it selects for better copying skills, which means slightly bigger or better organized brains.
And those bigger brains are then better at inventing more new stuff.
And learning it faster. So the whole cycle speeds up. Wilson saw this process really hitting its peak in humans, the brainiest species, the ones most reliant on culture. It's like a self-improvement loop on overdrive.
Wow.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, Wilson saw the brain as an active player in its own destiny. This cultural drive thing, it led to a core prediction.
Which was?
A strong link between relative brain size and how fast a species' anatomy evolved. And, well, that was confirmed. It basically suggested bigger brains give a species more power to evolve biologically.
This ties right into niche construction, too. The whole idea that animals change their environments and that, in turn, changes the selection pressures on them.
Okay, that sounds pretty convincing. But you said it wasn't immediately accepted. What were the problems?
Right, yeah. There was definitely some pushback early on. For starters, some scientists questioned whether those evolutionary rates really accelerated in big-brained mammals. They wanted more proof.
Okay, fair enough.
And maybe, more importantly, those links between brain size and social learning, they were mostly inferred, kind of assumed based on how things looked. There wasn't much hard data, like how often do animals innovate in the wild?
So assumptions, not solid evidence yet.
Pretty much. Plus, just defining intelligence and tying it strictly to brain size was tricky. You actually had some really respected researchers arguing that, apart from humans, maybe all vertebrates were basically equally smart.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Okay. And then there was this other hurdle, right? The small-brained animals.
Ah, yes. The invertebrate conundrum. This was a big one. Think about honeybees. Their brains are minuscule, less than a milligram, under 1 million nerve cells.
Tiny compared to our 85 billion.
Exactly. Yet bees are fantastic social learners. They copy each other. So if you need a big brain for social learning, how on earth do bees do it?
Yeah, that seems like a major hole in the theory.
It really did. It made people wonder if selection for just more copying could really be the engine driving bigger brains. If simple copying works with tiny brains, what's the pressure for growth?
So what was the answer? Did they figure it out?
Well, things got clearer, partly thanks to some clever computer simulations. They called it the Social Learning Strategies Tournament.
A tournament for computer programs.
Sort of, yeah. They pitted different learning strategies against each other, and the winners weren't the ones that just copied constantly. The winning strategies were super efficient and, crucially, strategic.
Strategic how?
They were choosy. They calculated, when the best time to learn was, who to copy, how much weight to give different pieces of information. It wasn't about volume of copying, but the quality and efficiency.
Ah, okay. So it's not just being a copycat, it's being a smart copycat.
Precisely. And that helped reframe the whole primate brain size thing. The link isn't just about copying more. It's about selection for efficient, strategic, high-fidelity copying, being really good at learning accurately from others.
So the fact that big brain primates do copy more is just a side effect.
Kind of an incidental outcome, yeah. They copy more because they're better at it, more proficient. The key driver, the thing selection is really acting on, is the ability to copy well. That's what powers the feedback loop.
Okay, that makes more sense. It's about skill, not just quantity.
Exactly. So cultural drive isn't just making brains bigger overall. It's specifically improving certain brain functions needed for that skilled social learning. And those improvements lead to growth.
Like what kind of functions?
Okay, think about enhanced perceptual systems. If you need to copy accurately, especially complex stuff like tool use, you need really good eyesight, sharp hearing.
Right, to catch the details.
Yeah. These have to get up close to copy, but maybe bigger brains allow for copying from a distance. That gives you more potential teachers, maybe it's safer, and that would favor expansion of, say, the visual and auditory parts of the cortex.
Makes sense. What else?
Then there's the challenge of actually doing what you see someone else do. It's called the correspondence problem.
How you translate seeing into doing.
Exactly. How does your brain watch someone, fish for termites with a stick, and then map that onto the movements your muscles need to make? That's complex.
Yeah, I never really thought about that.
It plausibly favors better connections, more circuitry, linking the parts of the brain that see or hear with the parts that control movement and body sense, the somatosensory and motor cortex.
Okay. And you need to understand why they're doing it too, right?
Absolutely. That leads to comprehension and theory of mind. To imitate well, you often need to grasp the other person's goals, their intentions. You need to see things from their perspective.
So understanding others' minds helps you copy them better.
Definitely. And it probably helps the teacher, too, if they can anticipate what the learner needs or doesn't understand.
And what about that strategic element you mentioned?
Right, strategic computation. Those winning strategies in the tournament weren't simple. They involved assessing payoffs, figuring out what most others are doing, processing information efficiently.
So the brain needs the hardware for that kind of calculation.
Exactly. Selection would favor the computational power to run those smart learning strategies. And that enhanced computation probably helps with all kinds of learning, not just social learning.
Like learning on your own.
Yeah. This also connects to mental time travel. The really smart strategies, like that discount machine one from the tournament, could look back at what worked before and simulate future outcomes.
Wow. Predicting the future, almost.
In a way, yeah. And that kind of thinking, planning, projecting, remembering past payoffs relies heavily on the executive parts of the brain. Your frontal lobes, especially the prefrontal cortex. So selection for strategic copying would beef up those areas.
Okay, prefrontal cortex. That sounds familiar. Isn't that also linked to creativity?
Bingo. You need innovation, too. Social learning is useless if there's nothing new to learn.
Right. Someone has to invent the new trick in the first place.
And guess what? Those same brain regions, frontal lobe, prefrontal cortex, they're absolutely critical for innovation and creativity. So cultural drive pushes for better learning and better inventing, likely using overlapping brain machinery.
So it's not just general growth, it's targeted improvements driving that growth.
Yeah.
But you said the effects go beyond just the brain.
Oh, absolutely. Cultural drive ripples outwards, influencing loads of other stuff, like social behavior. If you rely heavily on learning from others, it pays to be more social, right?
Sure, more chances to learn.
Exactly. Bigger groups, maybe more tolerant groups, provide more models to copy from, especially learning from your relatives, like those baby orangutans watching their moms for years.
Which links to the next point, I guess. How long animals take to grow up?
Yep, life history. You see longer juvenile dependency. Think about chimps learning intricate skills like cracking nuts or fishing for termites. That takes ages, sometimes 7 years or more with their mothers.
So they need that long childhood to soak up all the cultural knowledge.
Seems like it. And it also pushes towards extended lifespans. Why? Well, innovations often come from experienced adults.
Ah, the wise old ones.
Kind of. Older individuals have accumulated all this knowledge, maybe invented some tricks themselves. A longer life gives them more time to pass on that valuable info and also more time to benefit from it themselves, to cash in on their experience, so to speak.
That makes a lot of sense. Longer learning time, longer payoff time.
And it influences diet and foraging, too. Species that are good social learners often have more complex diets. They're good at things like extractive foraging, digging things out, getting hard-to-reach food.
Like the termite fishing.
Exactly, or using tools. These are often tricky skills that are much easier to pick up by watching someone else than figuring them out alone. So social learning opens up new food sources.
It really paints a picture of this whole interconnected system. Bigger brains, smarter learning, complex skills, longer lives, more social groups, all feeding back on each other.
That's the essence of cultural drive. It's this comprehensive feedback loop.
Which is incredible, but
Yeah.
it still feels a bit fuzzy. How do scientists actually, measure something like primate intelligence across hundreds of species? It seems impossible.
Yeah, that was a massive hurdle for a long time. Lab experiments are really hard to design fairly. How do you make a test that's equally challenging for a lemur and a gorilla?
Right, and you can't test all 200-plus primate species in a lab anyway.
Exactly. They're often limited to just a few species, maybe measuring one specific thing, and it's always in an artificial lab setting. So researchers needed a different angle.
What did they do?
They got creative, actually, inspired by work done on bird intelligence, specifically innovation in birds. Instead of only lab tests, they started systematically combing through decades of published scientific literature.
Looking for descriptions of behavior in the wild.
Precisely. They gathered all the recorded instances of things like innovation, tool use, social learning, complex foraging behavioral flexibility observed in natural populations. This allowed them to get quantitative data across way more species.
Okay, like a giant beta mining project.
Kind of, yeah. And this led to the big Primate G project. Simon Reeder and Yifkan Bergen were key figures here. They gathered data on 8 different cognitive indicators for over 100 primate species.
8 measures.
Yeah.
What were they?
Okay, there were 5 measures of that behavioral flexibility we talked about. 1, innovation rates. 2, how often social learning was observed. 3, tool use frequency. 4, how much extractive foraging they did. And tactical deception.
Tactical deception.
Yeah.
Like lying.
Sort of, more like social maneuvering, Machiavellian intelligence, using smarts to navigate complex social situations, sometimes misleading others.
Okay, got it. And the other 3?
Those reflected the cognitive demands of just, living. So 6, how varied their diet was, diet breadth. 7, how much fruit they ate, often requires finding ripe patches. And 8, social group size.
Wow, okay, that's a diverse set of measures. What happened when they crunched the numbers?
This is where it gets really interesting. They used a statistical technique called principal components. Analysis, basically, it looks for underlying patterns in complex data.
Yeah.
And they found something striking. A single dominant factor explained over 65% of the variation across all those different measures. Everything was strongly correlated. Innovation, social learning, tool use, diet, group size, they all tended to go together.
Whoa. One factor explaining most of it.
Yeah. And this factor looked an awful lot like what we call general intelligence, or G in humans.
Yeah.
You know, that ability to reason, solve problems, learn quickly, grasp complex ideas. So they called it Primate G.
Primate general intelligence.
Yeah.
Okay, but how did they know it was, like, real intelligence and not just some statistical fluke?
Good question. They validated it. First, Primate G scores strongly correlated with brain size, both absolute and relative. Bigger brains meant higher Primate G.
Okay, that fits.
And crucially, Primate G scores also lined up really well with the results from those older, smaller-scale lab tests of primate cognition. Species like chimps and orangutans, who always did well in lab tests, also scored highest on Primate G.
Ah, so it matched up with experimental data, too. That's pretty convincing.
It really was. It strongly suggested Primate G is a genuine measure of comparative intelligence across primates. But then the question becomes, okay, if intelligence is this general thing, what does that mean for all those specific theories about why brains evolved? Were they all wrong?
Right, like the social brain hypothesis, that intelligence evolved mainly for dealing with complex social lives. Does Primate G kill that idea?
Not exactly. It actually helps reconcile things. Because primate G includes social factors and technical skills and ecological measures, it suggests selection wasn't just for one narrow thing. It favored broader, more general intelligence.
So social intelligence is part of it, but not the whole story.
Precisely. The social intelligence hypothesis, which was kind of the dominant view, wasn't wrong, but maybe incomplete. Group size was still an important predictor of brain size, sure, but it wasn't always the strongest predictor of brain size or primate G.
Interesting.
And group size alone didn't reliably predict how well species did in lab cognition tests. So it points to, as the researchers put it, more to primate brain evolution than selection for social intelligence alone.
So maybe different pressures were important at different times or for different groups.
That seems likely. It led to this idea of multiple waves of selection. Maybe there was an early broad wave favoring basic social intelligence across most monkeys and apes.
Okay.
But then later, maybe a more intense, focused wave of selection for cultural intelligence. That blend of smart social learning, innovation, tool use kicked in, specifically in a few lineages, particularly the great apes.
The ones with the really big brains and complex cultures.
Exactly. That pattern fits with seeing more social learning in larger groups, which helps maintain those cultural traditions.
Has newer research backed this up?
Yes, quite strongly. People like Anna Navarrete and Sally Street did amazing work using high-quality MRI scans of hundreds of primate brains. They found the best predictors of brain size and cognitive performance were a combination of slow life history, long lives, long childhoods, and large group size.
Both matter.
Both matter, but interestingly, life history traits were often stronger predictors than group size alone.
So living longer and having a long learning period is really key.
It seems to be, and this ties back beautifully to the expensive tissue idea or Kaplan's work. Brains cost a ton of energy, right?
Yeah, metabolically expensive.
So how do you pay for them? By getting really good at exploiting high-energy, hard-to-get foods. Foods that often require complex skills learned from others.
Like cracking nuts or digging for tubers.
Exactly. And a long lifespan lets you reap the rewards of learning those difficult skills over many years. It makes the investment in that big, costly brain worthwhile. Remember, about half of all observed innovations in social learning in primates relate to foraging.
So the specific parts of the brain that evolved fit this picture too.
Absolutely. The neocortex, the big, wrinkly outer layer we associate with thinking, problem-solving, language that expanded massively.
Makes sense.
But also the cerebellum down at the back. We used to think it was just for motor control, coordinating movement.
Yeah, balance and stuff.
Right. But we now know it's crucial for fine motor skills, the precise movements you need for tool use, for extractive foraging, and it expanded significantly too, especially in apes and humans. It's part of that whole package.
It's not just one part growing, it's a coordinated change.
Yeah, and recent work suggests maybe we should focus more on absolute brain size, not just relative size. Bigger brains aren't just scaled up small brains, their internal organization changes.
How so?
Well, Georg Streiter showed they become more compartmentalized, with some regions becoming disproportionately larger and more influential. And Terence-Deacon's rule suggests that as a region like the neocortex balloons, it can kind of invade the territory of other brain areas, forging new connections.
Creating new capabilities almost automatically.
That's the implication. Selection for a bigger neocortex or cerebellum might automatically bring enhanced flexibility, better manual dexterity for tools, maybe even a greater capacity for learning complex sequences like language. It points towards selection for general intelligence affecting multiple systems.
Wow. And there was one more really unique primate thing you mentioned about lifespan.
Oh yeah, this is fascinating. In mammals, generally, there's a link between brain size and lifespan, but it's mostly seen as developmental bigger animals just take longer to grow and live longer. But in primates, the link seems to be cognitive. The researchers concluded, and I'm quoting loosely here, that by virtue of possessing a big brain and being able to use it to acquire useful survival skills from others, some clever primates literally managed to live longer.
So their intelligence directly helped them survive better and extend their lives.
That's the idea. Cultural intelligence in primates seems to directly facilitate survival in a way that's maybe unique. It's not just correlation, it's causation.
Mind-blowing. Okay, so this whole cultural drive package, Big brains, smart learning, long lives, complex societies. Is it just a primate thing, or do we see hints elsewhere?
Great question. It looks like this co-evolutionary package might well apply to other really smart animals, too. Think about corvids, crows, rooks, ravens,
Yeah, they're incredibly clever.
and parrots, cetaceans, whales, and dolphins. All these groups are known for complex social lives, innovation, tool use sometimes, impressive cognitive abilities, and yes, relatively large brains.
So maybe cultural drive is a more general principle for evolving intelligence.
It seems plausible. It's actually hard to point to an animal we consider really smart that isn't also a highly proficient social learner. The two seem to go hand in hand.
But if it's so general, why did things go so extreme in humans? Why did we end up with this level of intelligence and culture? Why the zenith with us?
Constraints. Other groups likely hit evolutionary roadblocks that primates, especially apes, didn't face quite so severely.
Like what?
Well, take cetaceans, dolphins, and whales. They're brilliant, but their flippers are for swimming. They can manipulate things with their mouths, but they don't have those primate hands for complex tool making and use.
Right, dexterity is limited.
And birds. Even the smartest ones face a fundamental constraint. The demands of flight put a pretty hard cap on body size and therefore brain size. Even big flightless birds didn't evolve manipulative limbs like ours.
So primates just had the right combination.
Yeah.
Hands, sociality, ecology.
It seems that way. The runaway process in primates could integrate selection for social smarts, technical skills, and cultural learning without hitting those same hard physical limits. The synergy could keep building.
Allowing the process to accelerate and eventually lead to, well, us.
Exactly. Which brings us back to Alan Wilson. Sadly, he passed away before all this confirming evidence really came together.
He didn't get to see his idea fully vindicated.
No, not fully. But his core concept, the cultural drive, refined and bolstered by decades of research from people like Reeder, Van Bergen, Street, and many others, now really looks like a cornerstone for understanding how the human mind evolved. It makes you pause and think, doesn't it? What are you going to do with this incredible brain, this legacy of cultural learning?
Yeah, it really does. So wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway for you, the listener? It seems to be that our intelligence, our very being, isn't just about individual flashes of brilliance.
Not at all.
It's fundamentally tangled up with how we learn from each other, how we build on each other's knowledge. This capacity is deep in our evolutionary history.
And the implication is maybe this process isn't over. The more we engage in that efficient, high-fidelity social learning, really trying to understand, adapt, share knowledge accurately, maybe we're still participating in that cultural drive.
As individuals, and maybe even as a species.
Yeah, think about it. How is this powerful, self-catalyzing process of cultural drive shaping us right now? What new ideas, new habits, new technologies are spreading through our culture? And how are you learning, adapting, maybe even contributing?
That is definitely something to chew on. A mind-blowing concept, how deeply connected our individual minds are to our collective capacity to learn. What a fantastic deep dive.
Absolutely fascinating stuff.